Camping. Walking in the woods. Hanging by Mother Nature. But the best thing about camping? Campfire stories. What is your favorite campfire story? And wouldn't it be so interesting if those scary ghost stories became real? Grab a blanket, turn off your lights, and get ready for the great outdoors. Because this time, these 8 scary campfire stories can actually happen to you. The woman on my camping trip. It wasn't camping, but hiking, and it happened over 2 to 3 months ago in southern Illinois with my girlfriend, sister, and 2 friends who are dating. We went at night the first time. Seemed like a good idea at the time. The trail was short and within walking distance of my friend's house, so we followed this short trail out to a very secluded pond that almost nobody knows about. We were sitting on the edge of the lake, smoking and enjoying the view when me and the other guy started to feel like we were being watched, and an uneasy feeling. And we generally have good instincts when it comes to things like this. We know when to get the fuck out. But our girlfriends and my sister said that we were just being paranoid. Then it got cold. Fast. It was January, but the night we went it was 60 degrees outside. It dropped to probably 40 degrees in 10 minutes, and there was this weird feeling in the air that was almost tangible. Everyone felt cold inside and out, and there was, for better lack of a word, a vibe of intense hatred around us. At this point, the girls freaked out and we hauled out, all the while feeling eyes on us. When we got back to the house, the temperature had returned to normal. Fast forward a month, it was a full moon and the perfect time for a night hike. The other couple wouldn't go, so my girlfriend and I went alone. We were sitting on the edge of the pond, and she's got her head on my shoulder. All of a sudden, I have an overwhelming sense of dread emanating from behind me, like there is a presence there I cannot see, and I couldn't turn around. I was so fucking frightened. I looked down at my girlfriend, and her face is cinched up like how she does when she's afraid, and I'm about to ask her if she feels it too, but as I'm about to speak, I hear a woman's voice in my ear. She says something that I completely understand but cannot say out loud because it is the darkest, most horrible parts of me in a language that I know isn't of this world. I'm staring at my girlfriend's face, hoping it's her, but it wasn't. And it was in the opposite ear. I start trembling and said to my girlfriend, "Remember everything you think and feel in this moment." She asked why, and I told her to do just it, and we would discuss it back at the house. After a few minutes, the presence is totally gone, and we start running and walking back. As we are doing so, we both felt watched and both heard branches cracking and odd noises in the woods. We get back, and I asked my girlfriend how she felt when I told her to remember, and she said that she felt so sad and cold and alone, like she wanted to die, and like that we were being watched. I agreed, but was thankful that she hadn't heard the woman talking like I'd had. So I tried to convince myself that we were just paranoid. My girlfriend and I agreed to never go back there again. So fast forward another couple of months or two, and I have a day off and nowhere to go till my girlfriend gets out of class. She's moved out of the house with the couple mentioned earlier, and I have at this point tried to convince myself that we were all just paranoid and there was no way that this all happened, but I just can't. So I, being the curious guy that I am, go to the pond alone in the middle of the day. I sit on a different part and have no trouble. So I start walking along the edge towards the spot where everything had occurred, and as I get closer, I hear something following me in the trees, but I can't see it. I sit down and I'm scanning the trees on the opposite bank when I get the feeling again. Temperature drops by 20 degrees and cold terror fills me. I'm just looking down because I'm paralyzed with terror. It was like a dream. I slowly look up just a little bit and saw the reflection of a woman dressed in black rags 6 feet away from me in the pond, but no woman. As I see that god-awful apparition, I hear a blood-curdling scream from the woods behind me, and I whip around. When I look back at the pond, the woman was gone. I knew I had to get the fuck out, but that meant going through those horrible woods. I take off running and start hearing breathing, cackling, and footsteps behind me. And as it gets to where I feel as if it is right on top of me, I whip out my knife and turn around, and there is nothing. Nothing but cold malice in the air, and again, she speaks to me. Different words this time, but the same language. I took off, jumped in my car, and sped off. I'll never go back to that place, because the worst thing is, the woman I saw is the same woman I have seen since I was in 3rd grade, and I started getting a reoccurring nightmare 3 to 4 times a year. For a little background information, my sister is an atheist and doesn't believe in paranormal things. My girlfriend and the other couple are spiritual, but until this, didn't put too much stock in ghosts or other supernatural things, and my beliefs are my own. None of us know how to explain what happened, and we all still go camping and hiking and exploring all the time. This was not random chance or animal, this was something else. I know not many people will believe me, but there has been zero embellishment to this story. A couple of years ago, my brother bought a large piece of land out in the middle of nowhere, about 30 miles or so from cell phone reception. It's quiet. There's no light pollution, no paved roads, and not a lot of people around. Shortly after he bought the place, 2 of my brothers, the landowner and another, me, and our families spent a weekend camping on the land and doing our best to clean it up. People had used it as a dump, and there were many downed trees, etc. On the second night we camped there, I woke up in the middle of the night to take a leak. As I was walking to the bushes in the dark, I realized that I could hear faint music. This didn't strike me as odd because I knew my brother had a radio in his camper. I finished up and went back to sleep with no further thought on the matter. The next morning at breakfast, I mentioned the radio and music. Several other people recalled waking up in the night and hearing music, but no 2 people heard the same music. Finally, the brother who had bought the radio woke up. I asked him about the music and he seemed a bit freaked out. He woke up during the night and went outside to smoke. He had heard music as well and assumed it was someone else. I should mention that he was the only one with a generator and a radio. It wasn't his radio we heard. It wasn't anyone else's either. I've been back several times, but I'm a bit freaked out by that place at night. I have fun while I'm there, but I'm almost always armed and I don't sleep in a tent anymore. I sleep in my SUV with the doors locked. It may seem kinda dumb, but realizing that everyone heard different music when there are no people, no functional radios, and no electricity is quite creepy. Mumbling in unison. I was in a cabin with 4 other people. I woke up at about 5 a.m. and they were all sleep-talking at each other. Like straight up, grunting, mumbling, shaking, and everything else a person mid-sleep would do. Only the 4 of them were actively engaging. in some kind of primitive sleep talk at once and towards each other. It scared the shit out of me. In the morning, I told them about what happened and they didn't remember a thing. What probably happened is one started sleep talking and it set off the rest of them. Still, what the fuck were they though? A scary camping evening. It was in 1971, and I was in my late 20s. I was then staying in Rose Hill, Meridius, not married yet, and staying at my folks. One day, my dad came home with a South African couple. He met them while coming back home, and they were tourists visiting Mauritius with their backpacks, tents, and sleeping bags. Meridius was still safe in that period, but independence was given by Great Britain in 1968, and a civil war had just come to an end a few months before. Two communities had fought for some political reasons. Anyways, my dad invited them home to sleep over for a few days. I remember the guy had a big blonde beard. He was very kind, his wife was as well, but I forgot her face. We decided to organize camping during a weekend on the coast of Mauritius in a place called Flick and Flack. This place, which is now pretty developed, was at that time very wild with just a very few houses. We went on a Saturday morning, found a nice place to put a tent and organized the day. The South African man and his wife were very good swimmers and very good divers. He spent a lot of time in the sea catching fish, crabs, some lobster, which were getting scarce then, and cooked all these goodies on a small homemade barbecue set. All of us, mom, dad, the couple, and I, really enjoyed the day. The sunset was beautiful. It was warm. We were in the summer and everything was perfect. When night came, we prepared a nice barbecue with chicken, beef, and pork, and a few shrimps we had caught earlier. The night was starry. My dad was happy and drunk, and the couple was obviously having a great time. Since we were not fluent in English, I was improving then. Communication was a bit difficult, but we could still make ourselves understand with gestures and sometimes drawing on sand. It was a great fun seeing my dad trying to converse with them with a very limited knowledge of English. Anyways, it must have been around 9 p.m. We were all seated on the beach, watching the ocean as well as the starry sky by the campfire. It was so beautiful. Then we started to hear what sounded like a complaint. A moaning sound. Could not determine the origin of the sound, but it was like a woman wailing. It was faint but clear since the place we were at was wild and remote. The wailing was not constant but would be heard from time to time. We put it on the sound of some sort of animal. We were seated on the beach facing the ocean when suddenly we noticed someone coming out from the sea on our left, at about 30 to 40 meters away. It looked like a woman with a long white dress, just walking from the sea to the beach. We could not see her face, but could guess that she had long hair. The only lights were the stars and our bonfire. She silently walked straight and disappeared from our view in the vegetation. We found this very odd. I knew it was not normal, but did not know what the others were thinking. My dad was drunk and watched the scene with a little smile on his face. I think he was lost in his thoughts. We all looked at each other and did not know what to think. I tried to check if there was a house where the woman walked to. I just stood up and walked towards the sea and looked on my left to see where she went. There was only green, bush, and trees. There were no lights or any constructions around. I was now scared because I was realizing that we must have seen a ghost. I walked back to the bonfire and sat and told everyone that I did not find any houses there. We stopped talking and everyone became alert. We could now hear all the little noises of the night. We heard faint crackling like someone or an animal quietly walking on dry leaves. Then suddenly, we heard some loud flapping noise on a tree nearby. It looked like large birds, pigeons or bats flying away. It scared us. Then my mom told me quietly that she felt something was not right. That she felt like she was being watched. The couple was looking around with their glass in their hands. Then, suddenly, something heavy fell in front of us on the beach about 5 to 6 meters away. I stood up to see what it was, but could not find anything. Everybody stood up and looked around. Nothing was found, despite the fact that the night was clear and sweet. The atmosphere had changed. Apart from my father, who was in a trip still because he was too drunk, we were all scared by then. The couple talked between them, and I could not understand. They seemed quite concerned about the situation. I did not know what to do. Could we stay there or maybe go to sleep, or maybe we had to leave? That was a pity. We were enjoying such a nice time before seeing that woman. Then, in the middle of the night, we heard this bone-chilling scream like a woman being attacked. It seemed close to our camp. We were on our feet with eyes about to pop out of their sockets. My heart was pounding so loud that I thought others could hear it. The couple started to pick up their stuff, and my dad followed them. Mom and I packed away everything quickly. As we were doing so, some coconuts fell and rolled on our camp as if someone had thrown them away. We were now scared to death and no one would talk. We heard running on the beach, then in the woods, but could not see anything. We quickly put our stuff in the car, and it was not easy because we did not have a big car, and we had taken time to pack things so that they could fit in. And when we came down, now that we had to pile things up, the worst was the barbecue. It was hot and dirty, and we did not want to leave it. I burned myself twice while trying to put it away. While we were packing away, things were happening around us. The screams seemed to originate from different places, and there were a lot of noises going on. We all got into the car, practically one upon the other with stuff on us. I decided to take the wheel because my dad was too drunk. As we moved away, we encountered a shock. We saw a woman dressed in white, standing by the little lane looking at us. It was bone-chilling. I stopped the car. She was standing about 4 to 5 meters away. I did not know what to do. I was too scared to move closer to her, but it was the only way out. We waited a few minutes as she was still standing there staring at us. I heard my mom praying and the South African couple mumbling something between them. Suddenly, we heard a bang, like something hit the car behind. We all turned to see what had happened. The atmosphere was very tense. I think my dad was becoming sober very quickly. He was now swearing. Did not see anything behind, but when I looked forward, the woman was not there anymore. But the scariest thing happened. She was now standing by the door looking at me. I can't describe the utter fear which took hold of me then. I released a scream and pushed the gas pedal. I think everybody screamed then. Both panicked, the car choked, and the woman was still there, looking at us. I remember not seeing her eyes or features because it was dark. I switched on the light again and drove off as fast as I could. The poor car got shaken on the dirt road. We reached the main road, relieved and shouting. What the hell had we seen and experienced? Fortunately, Rose Hill was not far from Flick and Flack, but when we reached the town, the car broke down. The fan belt of the car had broken and the engine stopped from overheating. We were in the 70s, no cell or any towing services available on a Saturday evening. The couple and my mom walked home, which was not far. My dad and I stayed by the car. At home, my mom phoned a friend of my dad, who was not staying far, to tow away our car. We finally reached home at about 11:30 p.m., completely exhausted. My dad's friend, who had helped us, invited us to have coffee, and we told him what had happened. Then he said that this place in Flick and Flack was haunted, and that several other people has encountered that woman. He said that we were lucky because there have been accounts of people walking to the sea, like being in a trance and never coming back, getting drowned by possession. Really scary and unbelievable. Some would be hurt by objects being thrown at them. A woman apparently lost her baby while being pregnant. She was a few weeks away from delivery when coming to that place and seeing the ghosts. She had pain in her stomach and started to bleed a few hours later. She had to go through surgery where her baby had died. These events would not always happen, but would randomly take place. The South African couple stayed 2 more days at home and left. We never saw or heard from them afterwards. I later discovered that there was a cemetery on the other side of the road, not too close to the road though. I never knew of that woman, who that woman was, or that ghost, but it seemed that regularly she would come out of the ocean and walk to the cemetery. However, in the late 80s, there was no more accounts of seeing her up to today. I think that the urban development has made it so that her plans had changed. Right outside my tent. When I was 17 or so, 2 friends and I decided to camp in the field next to my housing estate so we could drink beer and listen to music as loud as we wanted. This was a huge grassy field on a slight hill where all the surrounding houses were far away enough so they wouldn't be disturbed. And we couldn't be seen by anyone unless they were extremely close to our tent. It became late and my 2 friends had fallen asleep. I was having trouble sleeping around this time, so I lay awake for hours just thinking. Around 3 a.m., I heard the distinct sound of grass and vegetation as someone walked on it outside our tent. I was stunned with terror, for one, because this was a private field owned by a farmer who would probably be angry to find us there, but more so because I hadn't heard anyone approaching. Just suddenly, there was someone outside the tent. I held my breath out of fear and shock, which is when I heard another set of footsteps belonging to a dog by the sound of it. Filling with dread, I just lay as still as possible, breathing slowly and quietly, listening to this person and his dog walking back and forth outside the tent. I thought we were going to get shot or beaten by this dude. Then I saw this guy's shadow, which freaked me out a hell of a lot more than I already was. It was huge and looming over us every time he passed our tent. I couldn't see the dog's shadow even though I heard it making increasingly erratic circulations of the tent. This carried on for around 5 minutes, although it felt like much more time had passed. The shadow disappeared, and the sounds faded away. They didn't leave or anything. It was more like they were still walking outside of the tent, but with perpetually lighter footing. When I was sure the sound had ceased and there was no threat waiting for me outside, I freaked out at my friends, still as quiet as possible, and said that we had to go because someone knew we were here and we could get in a lot of trouble with the owner. I told them everything that had happened and they didn't believe me, thinking I had been asleep and dreamt the whole thing. I assured them I hadn't and we had to go right now. They tried to go back to sleep, ignoring me because they're lazy as hell and didn't want to pack everything up and go. I gave up too, and even though I knew now that I never go back to sleep. 10 minutes later, the sounds returned. Just like the volume outside had been turned up gradually, I felt the same dread I had felt before and whispered one of my friends' names so they could wake up and hear. "Shh," one said. They had already heard and told me to open the tent to see who was terrorizing us. I did so, slowly easing my hand out of the sleeping bag and up to the zipper. It probably took 5 minutes for me to reach it, just so I was sure not to make a sound, and I pulled it down so violently I nearly ripped the whole thing in half. There was nobody there. We got out within the space of 5 seconds and there was nobody anywhere. As I mentioned, we were atop a hill in the middle of a field, and so could see if anyone had decided to run. But there was nothing. Even though it was impossible for anyone to escape my seeing them, I'm absolutely positive there were footsteps outside our tent that night. In the middle of the woods. This happened to me when I was little. I went camping with my older brother and my mom. I was about 7 or 8. I went to bed around 10 o'clock in a sleeping bag inside my tent with both my mother and brother. Sometime during the night, I don't know when, I woke up somewhere in the middle of the woods, still in my sleeping bag. I had no idea where I was or where my tent was. I screamed for my mom, and I heard her calling back for me in panic, but she was easily 100 yards away or so. To this day, I have no idea how I ended up in the middle of the woods, still inside my sleeping bag. Gives me the chills. The boathouse. This wasn't camping exactly, but I managed a resort in Adirondack for several years. The place is old and rustic. It's miles from civilization and very peaceful. It was built in the 20s and had somewhat of a sordid past. It was built for a Canadian senator who would run rum down from Canada during Prohibition. We still had the underground lock-safe room where he would store the booze, as well as hidden booze hiding areas underneath some of the cabins. Calvin Coolidge stayed at a camp across the pond during his presidency and would visit my camp. For the spirits, I'm sure. Anyways, I met a girl and decided to sleep out under the stars on the camp's peninsula. Well, it started to rain, so I suggested we sleep on the screened in the porch of the boathouse, which I thought was a pretty good compromise. So after we had all set up, it was getting pretty late, about 1:30 a.m. or so. We were laying there, and I was all tossed-turned because I'd been asleep and woken up, so I had a hard time falling asleep after stuff like that. We'd lain there for about half an hour or so when I heard the bathroom door open in the boathouse. It couldn't have been anything else but that door. I did all the maintenance on those old buildings, and oiling that particular door was on my work list for the next day. My first thought was, my boss, the owner of the camp, she is notoriously nosy and has been known to spy on the staff in their staff quarters, so she was my first logical thought as to who made the noise. Well, why she would have been hiding out in the men's bathroom in the boathouse for over an hour is beyond my comprehension. I proceeded to hear footsteps walking across the boathouse, down the 3 stairs on the dance floor, and stopping right in the front of the door to the screened-in porch. I lay there waiting for the door to open and my boss to call my name. As the minutes stretched out, I started praying that she would open the door, walk away, sneeze, dance the funky chicken, anything. Nothing. The rest of the night I stayed up, stiff and straight as a poker in my sleeping bag. No receding footsteps, no door noises, no nothing. My girlfriend, I, the night, and the empty boathouse. The next morning, my girlfriend rolled over to me and immediately asked me about the footsteps the night before. She had also stayed up all night waiting for some other sound to explain those footsteps in the night, and heard nothing. She was terrified. Never went into the boathouse again. I unfortunately had to go into the boathouse on a daily basis. Everything was cool during the day. At night, I had to turn all the lights in the camp off. This is something I've done every night for the past 3 years. However, after that, there was always a sense of dread going on in there. Being alone in the dark in the boathouse. The worst part is that there is an enormous hanging bed in front of the fireplace. It was for the former camp owners to take naps on in the day, hung on chains, so that the bed can be lifted out of the way for entertaining guests in the evening. Every single night, that bed was swinging. 175-pound bed is swinging on chains in the dark of the boathouse. Until my last day at camp, if I went in at night, that bed was swinging. My professor's story. This story was told to me by my professor, who I trust very much. While he was camping and hunting in Montana, he had a strange vision. He was sitting on a hill, looking for a deer to shoot, and out of the forest walks his elderly mother. He is taken back because his mother lives in Slovakia and has never left her country. His mother says that she loves him and walks away. At this point, my professor is freaking out. He packs up his stuff and goes back into town. He calls his mother overseas. She answers and laughs at his story. He still feels unsettled, so he gets a flight and flies back to see his mother. He spends a few lovely days with her. Then the morning before he's about to go home, he wakes up to find his mother passed away in her sleep. My professor grew up in a war-torn Europe, escaped the Iron Curtain, lived as a street artist in Paris, and then became a 10-gallon hat-wearing Slovak in Texas. But somehow, this story sticks out a lot when I think of him. Rest in peace.